Welcome to another busy night of political news here on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. I'm Ruparaj. I'm sure you know what the big story of the day is. The House voting to force the release of the Epstein files, and we're covering all angles of that tonight. Oakland University political science professor Dave Dulio is back in Studio C, taking your questions about the vote, the political fallout, and a whole lot more. And Capitol Hill is where we begin tonight because Congress voted overwhelmingly to pass a bill which would force the Justice Department to publicly release files in the case against sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And it wasn't even close. Louisiana Republican Clay Higgins was the only one who voted no in the House. He claims the reason is to protect innocent people mentioned in the investigation. And the Senate passed it unanimously hours after it's an issue that sparked deep divisions within the Republican Party. The president campaigned on releasing the files, then said he was against it before finally pushing Republicans to vote yes this weekend. And it's led to a rift between the president and someone who is one of his biggest supporters, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's to the point the president said he'd endorse a challenger against her if the right person runs. Greene, for her part, accused Trump of attacking her and lying about her. And she said this on the steps of the Capitol before the vote today.
And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people whom we serve as representatives here in Congress demanded that this vote happen.
The bill forces the release of all communications and files related to the Epstein case within 30 days. We're diving into more of that coming up with Dave Dulio in just a few minutes. And as that vote plays out, former U.S. Treasury Secretary and former Harvard President Larry Summers is stepping back from public commitments after emails showed he had a friendly relationship with Epstein. Those emails showed that relationship considered long after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. Summers said he's stepping back to, quote, rebuild trust and repair relationships with the people closest to him. He didn't say exactly what stepping back meant, but the Center for American Progress confirmed he's ending his fellowship with the progressive think tank. To the White House now, where President Trump met with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as the pair announced Saudi Arabia is increasing its planned investments in the U.S. to $1 trillion. It comes just days after President Trump announced he agreed to sell F-35 fighters to the Saudis despite concerns the technology could end up in the hands of China. But something that raised a lot of eyebrows was President Trump dismissing U.S. intelligence that found the Crown Prince likely had some culpability in the 2018 murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi was a Saudi citizen and a Virginia resident who was a fierce critic of the kingdom. The Crown Prince denies any involvement, but a reporter asked about Khashoggi's murder today, as well as the Trump family's relationship with Saudi Arabia. It's a long soundbite, but it's important for you to hear the whole thing for context. Take a listen.
Is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president? Is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question.
Thank you.
I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine. They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually. I'm sure they could do a lot. And anything they've done has been very good. That's what we've done. We've built a tremendous business for a long time. I've been very successful. I decided to leave that success behind and make America very successful. And I've made America more successful by far than it ever was and that it ever could have been, no matter who was president. There would be nobody bringing in $21 trillion, that I can tell you right now. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or nothing illegal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc., in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Now, you heard the president say he has nothing to do with the family business, but we should point out, back in September, international real estate developer Dar Global announced plans to launch Trump Plaza in Gaza. That's the company's second collaboration with the Trump Organization in the Middle East. The Trump Organization, as we know, is controlled by the president's children. That's just scratching the surface, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories making news in the world of politics right now. The Trump administration has sped up its plan to shut down the Department of Education. 6 new agreements signed by the agency is essentially moving billions in grant programs to other agencies. The most notable one is putting the Department of Labor in charge of some major funding streams for K-12 schools. Student loans and civil rights are staying with the department for now. The Trump administration claims the agency is bloated. Opponents are worried it will disrupt programs for vulnerable students. A federal court blocks a redrawn U.S. House map in the Lone Star State. The judges agreed with opponents who argue the new districts will harm Black and Hispanic voters. Texas Governor Greg Abbott vowed to appeal to the Supreme Court. The map was drawn to give Republicans 5 additional House seats. It sets off a redistricting battle across the country. And National Public Radio will get about $36 million in grants to help the U.S. public radio system going. It partially resolves a legal fight where NPR accused the Corporation for Public Broadcasting of placating pressure by the president to cut off funding. The CPB redirected funds to another entity after initially approving a 3-year extension of the grant. President Trump has criticized NPR and PBS, accusing them of being biased. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting was defunded by Congress over the summer. All right, we're turning to the case against former FBI Director James Comey after the break. Former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider is breaking down what it all means. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here to talk about the case against former FBI Director James Comey is former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider. And it's so good to see you, Matthew. Thanks for joining us here tonight on The Pulse.
Thanks, Roop. A lot is going on in federal court, so I'm happy to talk about it.
And there certainly is. In fact, let's talk about this blistering opinion that's coming about the way the Department of Justice handled the Comey investigation. Some real things are unraveling for the DOJ in terms of how this was handled. Break this down for us.
It sure is. This all started when Jim Comey wanted access to the grand jury materials, wanted to know how was it that he got charged. And ordinarily, grand jury materials, they're secret. People don't even find out about them, and a lot of the times the defendants don't find out about them. In this case, the judge decided that he would take a look at them and see whether or not there was anything that might have been problematic. And the judge was not happy with what he saw. He said that it appears that the prosecution team in the Justice Department looked at privileged attorney-client communications between Comey and his lawyer. And the judge also said that it sounded like the prosecutor in this case, Lindsay Halligan, said things in front of the grand jury that were improper and possibly misconduct and possibly things that could be so prejudicial that they could throw out this indictment.
Let's talk about the initial case here and what so many Americans and Metro Detroiters remember about James Comey. Became a household name, really, in terms of his involvement with what he was looking into at the time.
That's exactly right. And he was looking into a variety of different issues. What is at issue here in this indictment is his testimony in front of Congress when he was asked about the different types of investigations. And he was asked about leaks and other things related to the Justice Department. Now, Comey's position is that he completely told the truth to the Justice or to the Congress, and he did not lie. The Justice Department's position is 180 degrees opposite from that. And they're saying, no, he lied and he can be prosecuted for that. And that's why they indicted him.
What happens when you have this type of irregularity or these types of irregularities that pop up like this? How does an investigation like this move forward, and what could end up happening?
So what the judge ordered was he issued an order that is redacted. We don't know precisely what the U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan said. If it's true that she actually said these things that were misconduct and inappropriate, this indictment could be thrown out. Now, that's not the end of the story, because there is a federal law that says in certain circumstances, if an indictment is dismissed within 6 months, it can be brought again. But that all really depends on the intricacies of this judge's ruling, and if he throws it out, how he does it and what that order says.
So if you had to choose your own adventure, the different scenarios out there for the DOJ could be a variety of different doors that could be opened here.
Absolutely. They're fighting on a number of different battles. Comey is saying you're prosecuting me because you're vindictive, that you're selective, that you didn't have the right prosecutor on board. Well, now there's a fourth front. And this fourth front has to do with the grand jury procedures. So you've got 4 fronts there that you're battling against. You know, Comey only has to win one of these to get this indictment thrown out. The Justice Department, they've got to win all 4 of them.
Compare this to the Letitia James case, of course, that so many people are watching as well. Similar circumstances here?
Somewhat circumstances, somewhat similar, but what's different in this case is that only one person signed this indictment, and that was the U.S. Attorney, Lindsay Halligan. And so in all these other cases, there are other people on the indictments, like supervisors, other prosecutors. They're all involved. They're involved in that prosecution. In this case, there's no backfall for Lindsay Halligan. She's the one who did the grand jury testimony. She's the only one who appeared. She's the only one who signed this indictment. And if that indictment is faulty, you can't fall back on some other prosecutor because she's the only one involved.
You know, when we talk about the Department of Justice, everyone, of course, you reflect on all the different cases that are going on right now. But in this particular case, the judge basically said that the government's actions in this case, whether purposeful, reckless, or negligent, raise genuine issues of misconduct, are inextricably linked to the government's grand jury presentation and deserve to be fully explored by the defense. This is kind of raising some big questions and raising a lot of eyebrows about the integrity of this department, which we should all have faith in.
We should have faith in it. And the important part of the judge's order is he said it raises issues. Now, the Justice Department, they can respond, and they've got a couple days to do that. I'm sure they will respond in force. They'll have their own arguments. So what we should really do is listen to the arguments of Jim Comey, listen to the argument of the Justice Department, which really hasn't been brought out yet, and then we can decide. And that's exactly what this judge will do.
And I know right now the DOJ essentially is looking at this saying, hey, you know what, we want to file a motion, and they filed a motion within a few hours of all of this, essentially saying that some of the facts in this case may have been misinterpreted. What do you think the DOJ means by facts that are misinterpreted in this particular case?
So the Justice Department wanted additional time. They said, look, the facts that are misinterpreted are actually the statements that took place by Comey in front of Congress. There is a bit of a question, in fact, about what he was talking about. And Comey's defense is that it was unclear. The Justice Department, of course, is saying it's crystal clear that he was not telling the truth. But the Justice Department should get that additional time, just like any other party should in a criminal proceeding. Both sides should get the same amount of time to plead their case in front of the court, and then the judge decides. So if you shorten the arguments for one side, not the other, that's really not how our system of justice operates. So we're going to find out probably how this results by early next week.
We'll be watching it really carefully, and someone who knows how the system works very well, former U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider. It's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us with your perspective here tonight. Hope to see you again real soon.
Likewise, Roop. Thank you.
We're picking up the conversation about the Epstein files with Oakland University political science professor Dave Dulio after the break, the possible fallout, and answering your questions. Next on The Pulse. It is people, power, and politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse, here to answer your questions about the fight over the Epstein files. Oakland University political science professor Dave Dulio. We always thank you for joining us, Dave. Thanks for always shooting down the middle and helping us understand this.
You got it.
This strange world we live in, right? We got a lot of questions. And some of the questions I have in front of me here, let's just dive right in.
Let's go.
Austin has this question about the Epstein files. Why did they tell us that they had the files, and then they said that they didn't, and now they said that there are files? So basically, the overall question is, why the flip-flop back and forth? Personally, I think it's because of political pressure from the citizens in America and because of Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, I think Austin answered his own question. It's politics, right? I think that we are seeing the end of this process that has had a lot of twists and turns. Well, maybe we're seeing the end. We don't know what's coming next, but at least in terms of the decision about releasing the files, I think we're at the end of that now. We're going to have a tranche of information come out. So I think, to more specifically answer his question, there were times when being for releasing the files was politically popular or politically beneficial. There were other times, maybe for some Republicans, where it was less politically beneficial when the president wasn't on board with signing this legislation or having this legislation passed that has now been through the Congress and is making its way to his desk.
And perhaps not popular for the Biden administration, representing the Democratic Party at that time, to have anything released, because in the years that Biden was in office, there were calls to release these files as well. And we know that there could be possibly some ties to Democrats in these files as well.
No doubt about it. And I think the question that some have asked in recent days and weeks, why, if Democrats are all hot to trot now about releasing the files, well, you had your chance during the 4 years of the Biden administration. Why didn't you do it then?
The answer is politics.
The answer is politics, and it's a fair question. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the next question. Aaron Tobin, a regular on The Pulse. We always thank you for your time, Aaron. And you were asking, why didn't President Biden release the Epstein files? And when he was president and Democrats control both the House and the Senate, well, clearly because of politics, but also perhaps the pressure wasn't there also as much as it is on President Trump, who campaigned on that, right? And there's a MAGA movement that's calling for this.
There are elements of the Republican Party who did make this a big deal, right? And it goes deeper than Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? I mean, there are other members of the House of Representatives and probably the Senate, but the voices in the House seem to be louder. And there's a member from Tennessee, his name's Tim Burchett. He's been talking about getting the Epstein files released for a long time, right? He doesn't make the headlines like Marjorie Taylor Greene does, but he's been a part of that for a while.
Let's look at Jackie and her question. Jackie, thank you for asking your question here on The Pulse. You're saying, hey, if Trump is in the files, is there any way he could have worked behind the scenes to make sure no one would ever find out? That's the first part of the question. The second is, if we do find out the truth, what is anyone going to do about it in relation to Trump? Now, I find this interesting, the first part of the question. If he worked behind the scenes to make sure no one would ever find out, when the Department of Justice releases information, should we in good faith assume that they're releasing all the information, all of the files?
I think we should start there, right? And look for signs that it's not that, right? I think we have to start from a position of trusting the government, even though, right, so many examples in recent years and through the decades, right, where maybe the government doesn't deserve all of that trust. But I think that's where we should start. See if anything looks fishy, and then go from there.
What are the possibilities of actual criminal ramifications for anybody involved in these files that's actually in those files? Is there some likelihood that someone may actually be implicated in a crime from years and years ago?
I think that's probably on the table. I'm no lawyer, right? So we need to find somebody, a criminal defense attorney, probably to more specifically answer that question. But we don't know, right? I think it all depends on what's in there. And I would say two other things. Number one, there's a bit of a corollary here between the release of these documents and the release of the JFK files, right? We were all interested to see what was going to come out of that, what bombshells might exist, and it turned out there weren't that many.
Nothing burgers.
Yeah. Now, that's unlikely to be the case with this tranche of information, just because they're likely to be names of very well-known people, very well-connected people tied to Jeffrey Epstein. I think that there's certainly a political price that could be paid if individuals who are in government now or maybe recently were in government or are looking to become in government. If those names appear, political firestorm in Washington.
It's not very clear to me when people say MAGA followers or people who are MAGA folks, whether that's a monolith, whether they're not all the same. I mean, you can't say all Democrats, all Republicans, but it seems like the fight was a lot of Trump supporters who are MAGA folks were saying, release the files. And then when the President Trump said, I don't know if I want to do that, it seems like the MAGA movement kind of followed President Trump with that. Will they return back to base and say, yeah, we demand it, we want to see it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think your point about it not being a monolith is really important because there were enough Republicans who were part of that group who didn't follow the president, right? This is really one of the first splits between different factions maybe in that Make America Great Again movement of Republicans that is led by the president and was really created by the president. I think it's also interesting to think about the groups of Republicans as they in the House as they were thinking about this vote that was in front of them. There were the diehards, right? Your Marjorie Taylor Greenes. There were your gettables, like or even those who were sort of behind the scenes principled folks, like this gentleman Tim Burchett that I mentioned. And then there's all the others who I would imagine, as it became clear that this was going to pass, that the floodgates opened for Republicans to say, all right, I might have been willing to give the president some cover on this, but since it's going to pass, I'm going to come over and vote with everybody else.
What about Marjorie Taylor Greene? When you look at the fallout from that, the president calling her a traitor, at this point, do some of the MAGA followers actually follow President Trump to say, yeah, now that you disagree with our president, you're no longer a part of our group?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I would definitely expect there to be some repercussions sort of in national politics for Representative Taylor Greene, just because, there is such a strong presence, obviously, for the president and what he is trying to get the Republican Party to be and trying to get to do legislatively, even on the Hill.
But does there then become a rift that's big enough that you have two MAGA parties, one that's a loyalist to President Trump, one's more like an MJT, a Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I don't think she has the juice to create that following, right? I think that she's probably ends up more of an outlier, not necessarily an outcast, but somebody who's just not part of the cool club anymore.
Well, we'll have to watch how this club continues to evolve and develop. And we know in the next 30 days, we'll be seeing the Epstein files. Once they're released, of course, we'll pour through them. We'll look at them. We'll have you back and we'll chat about it.
Sounds good.
Dave Dulio, great to see you. Thanks for answering our questions here on The Pulse. Our Ask the Expert series does continue later this week on The Pulse. Thursday, former auto supply chain executive Jan Griffiths is answering your questions about tariffs. To send in your questions, email us at thepulse@fox.com or just scan the QR code on your screen to auto-launch your email. We look forward to hearing from you, as always. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ruth Raj. As always, it was great to be with you. Thank you, Dave. Great work.